down on the sinister gender ideology sweeping British schools, with a blanket ban on school children being able to socially transition their gender due to be announced later this week. But in a shocking twist led by Attorney General Victoria Prentice, the ban will now be scrapped after Prentice and government lawyers advised that it would be unlawful, with the Equalities Act stating that gender reassignment is a protected characteristic regardless of age. So, if even the government can't crack down, are British schools at greater risk now from some of this quite extreme gender ideology, Nana Acquia?
Well, I'm sorry, but this is a very, very worrying trend. That schools, really, the guidance needs to be very firm. And I absolutely believe that at an impressionable age, it shouldn't be so loose that you can then say, well, I'm going to now identify as a boy. And when I was young, I used to try to go to the toilet standing up. I wanted to be a boy. And if somebody got hold of me at that age and started molding me and putting ideas into my head, saying I can use the different toilets and doing this, and I can use the men's changing room. And actually, it's quite dangerous for young girls to be sharing going into a boys' room and so on and so forth. Even recently, a young girl was assaulted by a boy in the unisex toilets, and now schools must now have separate toilets for each sexes. So I think that allowing this fluidity at such a young age will start putting ideas into people's heads that don't really exist. And I think it's a projection of older views from people who are older onto children, and I actually think it's almost a form of grooming, and I think is a very worrying thing.
Matthew Laza, you disagree. You think kids should be able to transition at school?
Well, I think first of all, I think the schools need this advice, which we've been waiting for a long time. And this row is very interesting because it's basically a row within the Tory party, because Kemi Badenoch is trying to burnish her credentials for the next leadership election by trying to be tougher than Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, who frankly takes the position that I do, which is that you can't ban social transitioning in schools.
Why not?
But I don't believe in medical transitioning before 16. So that's which is a very serious distinction.
So I don't understand why you shouldn't ban social transitioning in schools. It confuses the kids. It is actually...
Well, they're going to do it anyway. I mean, people are going to adopt different... I mean, people do that at school anyway, and adopt different personas. They have different... You can't tell kids, which way they're going to dress.
Yes, you can. If you have a school uniform, the kids wear the school uniform.
Nowadays a school uniform generally consists of a sweatshirt.
Listen, I've got children. Have you got children?
Kwasi, where do you stand on this?
So look, I think that if the government was trying to, I think Rishi, the Prime Minister, was trying to do something sensible. I was surprised. I don't know what legal basis the Attorney General had, essentially, and the government lawyers to say that is unlawful, because I think the vast majority of Tory MPs, parliamentary party, would be backing the Prime Minister on this. We're kind of losing sight of the purpose of school. I mean, school is to get a really good education. It's not there to fight woke battles and culture wars. Yes, it does reflect society, but that's not the primary focus, or shouldn't be the primary focus of what education is about. And I think we're getting sucked into these debates that actually the vast majority of people aren't engaged with. And lots of people, we spend endless amounts of time talking about transgender issues.
No, but I think people are engaged with it. I think people are worried about they're worried about this stupidity of saying...
No, but the problem is that it's been driven, this whole thing has been driven by woke transgender lobbyists, essentially.
Do you just
and that's the bit that people are pushing back against.
Yeah, I don't think this has been driven by lobbyists. I think what we need is a common sense approach, and schools are crying out. School leaders, head teachers across the country are crying out for advice, because as we've seen with several cases recently, it's unclear how schools are to behave and what the rules are. So, what we don't want is the government fighting over what legislation they're going to do. And, you know that the Education Secretary wants to do one thing. Kemi Badenoch, who wants to be the next Prime Minister, wants to be tougher.
Prime Minister has said that this is what he wants to do.
But he can't get it through. He can't get it through, though, can he?
It's not a question of him getting through. It was the judge. It was not the judges in this case, but it was the lawyers. It was the government lawyers and the Attorney General who said, "Oh no, this you can't do this."
They're playing with children's lives, and it's not funny. They need to get a grip and bring some common sense into the room. Really, frankly.
But your common sense is obviously different from
it's common sense.
No,
but it's quite simple.
I agree with you. I think that and I think a lot of time is being absorbed in this thing. Whereas actually, what we should be doing is trying to get our schools to educate our kids, not have.
It would have helped if we had 12 education secretaries in 13
Well, I don't
years
think
as
it's
well.
been that many, but that's the primary
Something like
focus
that,
of
you're not
school,
far off.
right? It's not about fighting these woke cultural war issues.
Well, it shouldn't be. The school should be focused on actually
course it
educating
should
the kids
be.
and getting the kids
Of course
good
it should
grades
be.
instead of working out whether all
And the best schools are focused on that.
Yeah, no, good point. Fascinating debate. But look, if you were in any doubt.